He is the coordinator of the e-development group from the World Bank, and I think that is the look we need from a multilateral organization to have all the ingredients. Thank you, Oleg.
Thank you. The microphone is working, so I'm okay. Thank you very much to the organizers for this excellent conference in this wonderful building, amazing trade school. I've never seen such a trade school in my life. So thank you to all you participating here, which shows your commitment to the ICT for Development agenda, which I believe is the most important agenda today, and I will explain why I believe this. I will probably share 3 messages today. One is why we cannot take ICT for granted, as many development professionals do. And I know many of you don't, but I would like to remind again why we shouldn't. Second, why we cannot take knowledge sharing for granted, and why networks are so essential, to promote the knowledge sharing. And the third, I hope we'll partner, on these issues. These are the things I wanted to share in the opening remarks. So, first, a little bit about myself. I've been working at the World Bank for the last 13 years, of which 9 I devoted to the ICT for Development agenda. And it's a major investment of my life, and I'm doing it because I really believe that ICT today is the most powerful tool we have to change our world for the better. And in fact, not only me believe, I think a lot of you believe in this. And in fact, last week, Jeffrey Sachs was speaking at the bank, and surprisingly, he said the same thing. So we start hearing this from mainstream economists even. Still, majority of people don't realize that. So I think it's very important that we remind key decision makers that in today's world, ICT and internet especially can work miracles. And if there's no limit to our imagination. I think our imagination is the only limit what we can do with it. And so I hope that we will bring that understanding, that awareness to the highest level of society, of development organizations. Because we've been struggling, at least at the World Bank, I can tell you that for the last 9 years we've been trying to motivate our colleagues in the sectors like health, education, rural environment, etc., to use ICT more innovatively. Everybody understands ICT as a useful thing to have and as just one other tool, right? But I don't think it's enough. I think we need to show the transformational potential of ICT to completely change the way we do business. I think this transformational nature of ICT has not been appreciated. I think we should, this time of crisis, I think is good for us to, to stop, take a pause and think, and to rethink comprehensively what we've been doing so far and try to do things very differently. So ICT does not really work if we don't change the way we do business, if we don't change our mindsets, if we don't learn how to do things differently, if we don't share best practice. ICT, is a promise, but it's a great promise, great potential. But unless we do these other things well, ICT will remain a promise. So I think only in a holistic way, ICT makes a difference. And so, just what is in common between, Jesus Christ, Alexander the Great, Plato, Thomas More? I think the one important thing in common, they wanted to drastically improve the world. And if they were born today, I think they would be very big on ICT. I think they would be among us. Yeah? They would be trying to use ICT as much as possible to transform this world. And I think this big picture is missing in the development, discourse and the development agenda. And it's not hype, it's a reality. I think the world today is very different than it was 15 years ago. And we cannot pretend, do things the way we used to. And I think each of us who understands this needs to, to try to share that message in a language which people understand with our colleagues, in the positions of power, And I would like to basically bring this analogy. ICT cannot be taken for granted, just like love cannot be taken for granted in marriage. Marriage can work without love, but if you don't have love, it will not be an effective marriage, right? So similarly, ICT in development, if you do development with ICT, you can still do it, but it won't be very effective. And in today's world, we can do it much, much better. So I think, let's use this analogy, you know, and remember it. So basically, why the private sector is actually doing this much, much better than governments and donors. The private sector is facing competitive pressures. They have to survive, you know, so they're competing and they're using ICT to compete better and to win this battle, right? In the government, things are different. In the development agencies, things are different. So the knowledge sharing is probably the best thing we have to create this peer pressure among ourselves to see the best practices from the other organization, the other department, to motivate us to innovate, to do things differently. So that's why I truly believe in knowledge sharing, and that's why for the last 9 years or so, I've been focusing on knowledge sharing and ICT for development, and trying to share the best practice within World Bank from within countries, because I see this thing will create incentive and motivation for people to do things differently, you know, to innovate, which otherwise is very difficult. So I believe that networks and knowledge sharing networks are extremely important tool for us to bring that awareness widely and to make sure we don't reinvent the wheel. And I can share when we go to Q&A how we are doing this in the World Bank. We have created a lot of networks in different sectors. In ICT for development, the e-development thematic group, which I coordinate, is probably the most active one. And we have grown since last 9 years organically. We are not being too pushy. Whoever comes to us, we welcome them. So welcome all of you to join our thematic group, our community of practice. We do regular webcasts, video conferences, so many of you can participate from your office, from your homes, in our online discussions, in the video conferences. So we grow our community of practice worldwide. Now we're trying to take this to the next level. We're trying to have the country-level communities of practice, our partners in various countries. In India and Russia, we're trying to pilot it. So I will be happy to discuss this further when we do the Q&A. But again, I would like to urge you not to take ICT for granted when you do development work, and convince your colleagues in your agencies not to do that either. It's a big mistake. And then let's not take knowledge sharing for granted, because I think this is an essential thing which is missing in many documents, but without it we cannot succeed. That's my answer.
Thank you very much. I think that we have plenty of ideas to begin with our debate. Perhaps before we ask for questions, we could give the opinions of the persons in the round table about 2-3 of the key issues that just put. The gender balance in the participation in networks, perhaps the balancing between new channels of power and money, and that difficulty of strengthening organizations with branding in the different organizations participating in the network. I don't know the idea Oleg said about that companies are leading this changing process, and perhaps for knowledge management,